Hey, this is Dan Bissick with College and Beyond, and I'm excited to be meeting with Suzanne today. Suzanne owns her own interior design business and has graciously agreed to join us to go ahead and tell us a little bit about her past and what she's doing and how she got into this business. So, Suzanne, thanks for being with me today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you decided to get into the occupation of interior design. Was it something that just kind of you've thought about through the years, or what happened?
So I was always interested in design, and I took art classes when I was in high school. And I think I was a little bit discouraged because I was under the impression that I needed a great big portfolio to present to the school to be accepted into the program and that kind of thing. So I ended up going to nursing school instead,
Oh, wow.
and and did 2 years of that, and decided that I wasn't cut out for that either, that I was afraid I was going to hurt someone. It was a lot of responsibility. So I went back to design school. I got a 2-year degree and worked for an interior designer, actually two different ones. I worked for one in Connecticut and learned a lot from her, became familiar with how the design process works, ordering fabrics, became familiar with a lot of the lines that are out there, and moved to New York, got a job with another designer that also had a gift store, which had a lot of different things. So I did interior design, working with clients, doing furniture, draperies, that kind of thing. But she also had like a gift store that had high-end things all the way down to, great little $25 gifts for people. So I worked with her doing the buying for the store. She had an apartment on Park Avenue in the city. And so I had the opportunity to go with her to go to the showrooms in New York and do the buying for the store. And that was great.
Oh, yeah, I bet that was amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that's my dream ultimately someday to have something like that again. Then we moved to California, and I worked for a kitchen designer out there and got a lot of knowledge in how cabinets work, good and bad cabinets, the layout, that kind of thing. Trying to think where we went from there. We did a lot of moving around in the beginning. And then ultimately, after about 10 years of doing design and all the moving we did, it was difficult. I'd start building a client base up and we'd be uprooted again. So we moved to Pennsylvania, and I went back to nursing school and got my degree and worked as a nurse for a couple of years. And then when we were in Michigan, decided that I wanted to do design again. So in 1998, I started this firm and ultimately started working with a builder as a subcontractor, doing he built custom homes. So I worked with all his homeowners, helping them pick their plumbing, their trim, cabinets, paint colors, and then furnishings. And I worked for him for quite a few years. And then I actually was employed by him for a while, doing all his project coordination, responsibility for getting bids pulled together. We did showcase homes, and that kind of thing. And then I moved to Kentucky with my children after I got divorced, working again full-time as a nurse and raising them and running them around. I didn't have too much time for design. And then after they were both out of the house, I really started doing design again. And since then, I have had quite a few new clients, been small projects to working with people building new homes, which I think I like that better than doing, just reworking a living room or something like that. To right now, I'm working on a marina down in Tennessee. I have a home down on the lake, and the marina that I'm associated with was recently purchased, and they are remodeling all their rentals. So I'm currently working with them on that and a couple of other projects. So I've kind of been all over the place and done a little bit of a lot of things, and loved every single piece of it. And I think it's given me a lot of knowledge to be able to do it on my own.
Yeah, what an interesting background as far as all the different places you've been. I mean,
Yeah,
whenever you think of interior design, to be in the New York City, the big,
yeah.
that place in California as well, it had to be
Right.
really exciting.
Yeah, I was fortunate in a way. It made it difficult because I would build a client base and then lose them and have to start again, but it also gave me a pretty diversified background in a lot of different things.
Yeah. So, well, the new employers that you went to were lucky then because you had so much experience with trying different things and, over that span of time. That's really what an interesting story. So, what do you love the most about your job today? I mean, with this whole interior design focus that you're doing now.
Um, I love that there is so much out there that you can pick from. You can start with falling in love with a rug or a piece of furniture, and you can do a whole room built around that. Or you can also start out with something and end up in a completely different place because of something even better you found along the way. There's so much out there that you can pick from, going from making something look great on a very tight budget because you don't have to spend a lot of money to, really going crazy wild and having an astronomical budget, which is kind of fun too, because the sky's the limit.
So, and I have to ask them, what do you like the least about your job as an interior designer?
Um, Dealing with the availability of products to consumers out there. It used to be that the design business was very trade oriented and very exclusive oriented. So you couldn't go on the website and Google a particular lighting fixture you were looking for and find it. I found that there are times that my customers find the same thing I've sourced for them and they can buy it on the internet for less than I can buy it as a trade account, which is rather frustrating. So starting this year, my focus is kind of changing. I am increasing my hourly design fee and not concentrating so much on making my profitability coming from what I sell. I will still try to make a profit on that. But my hourly rate is going to go up just because I can't compete with everybody out there who's selling, on all the different online things that you can use.
I mean, it almost sounds like what's happened because of the evolution of Amazon and all these other websites, Etsy and all these other places, that because they've created that competitive situation for you, that you've had to find, okay, how can I be fairly compensated for the intellectual property that you have, that you've amassed over all these years of doing it, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's very interesting. And I can understand your frustration, but I guess you can say, okay, well, go buy these things and then come back to me when you have them, that type of thing.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. And part of me wants to say, if you agree to work with me, part of our agreement is that you will buy your products from me. But again, and I can understand where they're coming from. Everybody's looking for a deal. And so if I'm coming to you with the same bed that you can find, and I had this happen just recently, there's a company, we found a great bed for one of my clients, and the lead time for me was the end of January. Well, she went shopping for it and she found it at Macy's of all places, and she's already had it delivered.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
so that makes it difficult. And and if I put myself in their shoes, I'd be looking for the best deal on something that I could too. So I have to approach it in a different way and just realize that's the nature of the way business is and the way the economy is now, and come up with another way to still make myself, be able to be compensated for my time and my knowledge. A huge part of what I do is the research to find you the thing that's going to work properly, not only to tell you whether it's going to work or not, but to actually locate it. So, I've done all the legwork and all the work, and then you go buy it somewhere else is a little bit frustrating. So my time I need to be compensated more for than what I have been.
So if you could change anything about your job, what would it be?
Do you mean more so from how I approached it and how I got involved, or more just from the industry as a whole?
Oh, it could go both ways. Why don't you give us both sides of it? So how you got into it and or kind of the way the industry's going now.
If I could do it differently, I would definitely give myself more confidence and apply to schools that I would have had a much better education background. I do have a 2-year degree, but I think a bachelor's is important. And now the NCIDQ exam is much more recognized and much more of a push in the industry. There's a lot of states now that require you to have some level of education before you can call yourself an interior designer versus an interior decorator.
Mm.
And I recently just, I took the last part of the NCIDQ in October and I passed it finally.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you for years. And I think that would have been a lot easier had I gotten a bachelor's, had been in a program that had internships to give me much more exposure with design firms and that kind of level. But that also wasn't available back then. You know, when I started this, how many years ago? I don't want to say how many years ago it's been. You know, things were different back then, but, you know, in hindsight, I definitely would do that. So,
Yeah.
as far as the industry, you know, aside from changing the exclusivity of products, I don't think I change anything. It's very broad. You can do hospitality design, you can do healthcare design, residential, you can work for an architect. It's just so multifaceted now that I think there's a lot more opportunity than there ever was before.
And so now you're a solo business owner. So you're running your own business. In the past, you've worked for a business, you know, where you were employed by them. Which one do you like better?
Oh, there's perks to both. Being self-employed, I make my own schedule. However, my schedule every day starts at 4 a.m. And sometimes I'm getting texts from clients at, you know, 8, 9 o'clock, and I've been told you need to set boundaries. But at the same time, you also have a very personal relationship with your clients. And a lot of times you're a psychologist and a psychiatrist when they call you in a panic.
Sure.
They've come home and the contractor has been working all day. And I had this happen. I was actually on vacation and the contractor was laying some tile and they got home and he freaked out because it was so busy but the grout hadn't been put in. And once you put the grout in, it took it away. So after a half an hour of, you know, talking him off the ledge. So you have to be available for those kinds of things. Being employed by somebody else, you know, you're given vacation time, you pretty much have more set hours. The expectation is you're not going to be available like that. Health insurance,
Yeah,
you know,
benefits. Yeah, those benefits are a big deal.
are huge. You know, and depending on your background, you can learn a lot from working with other people, not just, you know, good things, but bad things. A lot of things I learned from the people I work for was things that I would absolutely never do if I ever had my own company, kind of thing. So there's a lot of knowledge.
I mean, are you talking about tricks of the trade, or are you talking about bait and switch, or what are you talking about there?
No, tricks of the trade and just the way they handle things. I can remember years ago, we had a really big client and we were doing a lot of work for her, and she had found this fabric that she fell in love with. It was kind of a remnant, and she wanted our seamstress to make this little window treatment using this fabric. And the woman I worked for at that time said, absolutely not, you did not buy it from us. And I thought, in the grand scheme of things, this is a large client. She's spending a lot of money. You know, for what the fabric cost, is it really worth that couple of $100s to make her upset with us? And so I think you have to be a little bit flexible and that kind of thing. The other thing, you know, you find your contractors and you treat them well and you stick with them, because there's a lot of people out there that you start working with, you think they're great, and then they're not. And all it takes is one little glitch and it can wreck a whole job. So.
Right, because they're a reflection of you, aren't they? Because
yeah,
the client's depending on you to find these folks that are going to be there on time, do quality work and all that kind of good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have a situation currently where we put a kitchen in June, and the contractor drilled the hardware incorrectly, which is, it's, you know, it's a mistake that happens and it's not a big deal. I ordered a new door, which he was going to take care of. That happened in June. It is December. I still do not have my door. And
Oh, no.
so it's one of those things where the job went almost flawlessly and they're completely happy, but there's this one big sticking point of a stupid door that I have no control over. So because of the supply issues with this particular company, I'm probably not going to use them again because it's been so difficult to get one door from them.
Yeah, and then you
So,
throw COVID on top of that and the supply chain
yeah,
issues that are existing out there on everything, right? I
yeah,
mean,
that's a whole nother thing. And that's something that in a way is helpful because I think people have learned that you just have to wait for things, where before we were such an immediate society that if I couldn't get you something, if I told you your drapes were going to be 8 weeks, you'd be like, forget it, I'm not doing that. And now people are like, okay, it is what it is now.
hmm,
So good and bad in that respect.
yeah, very, very interesting. So if you had to do it all over again, would you still go back into interior design versus nursing, or would you do something different?
Um, gosh, that's tough because I still do nursing. Um,
Do you really? So you're doing both.
I'm doing both. Yeah.
Wow. You're
Yeah.
you're superwoman.
I don't sleep much. Um, it's hard because it's left brain, right brain. And in a way, the nursing gives me the stability that I need, to know that I'm always going to have an income. I think back
Mhm.
through the pandemic when it first started, if I had just been solely trying to support myself in interior design without another income, I would have been in a lot of trouble. So I'm kind of blessed in that I have both and I can bounce back and forth between the two. And I think it gives me a little bit more confidence with the design because I'm a little bit more willing to take risks because I know I have something else to fall back on. So
Yeah, do people ever ask you about that, Suzanne, about, well, so you're a nurse, so how are you going to balance the interior design work that we're asking you to do versus the nursing that you're doing?
I don't usually divulge that I'm a
Okay.
nurse until further on into the relationship, until I think they've gained some confidence. And then in conversations that you have, things come up and it tends to come out. And then it's not been an issue. And in this world of emails and texting and that kind of thing, I'm able to manage both pretty easily. So
I think it's the coolest thing ever. You've got the stability of the nursing, so you're serving in that capacity, but you're also serving your creative side by
right.
doing the interior design. That's really cool. I just really think
It's very left brain, right brain.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And the other side is I've often considered, and especially since I just passed the exam, I could work for an architect who's involved in healthcare design, and having the healthcare background where I've actually been working in it would be, I think, a huge input to, making those decisions. So
Your
who knows?
resume is incredible, with kitchen and the gift shop and all the high end. And I mean, my goodness, I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of the perfect story that you can tell anybody of, oh yeah, I can do that, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and the next biggest thing that I've I'd have to figure out where I could get investors. So in Knoxville, which is ultimately where I think I'll end up moving to, there is no one-stop shop for hardware. For instance, door hardware, interior door hardware, exterior door hardware, specialty plumbing. And when I lived in Michigan, there were several stores that did that, and they were great because you could go and do your whole house and they had unusual things. There is nothing like that in Knoxville. So I've thought
Wow.
that would be a perfect business to start in that area. But it would take a lot of work and it would take some capital and, that kind of thing. But I think that it really would be a great opportunity. Who knows, maybe someday.
Yeah. That could be the next chapter of your book.
Right. Yeah.
So what do you see the future looking like in interior design? I mean, will there always be a need for it? And how do you get to your clientele? I mean, how do people find out about you? And especially again, since you're a solo practitioner.
I think there will always be a need. What astounds me is that most people cannot visualize things all put together. They can't see it, which for me is such a foreign concept because everything I see, I put it into some kind of context and put things all together in my head. There's also, I think, a lot more design in the commercial side of it with hospitality and healthcare. I mean, everybody, even if you look at colleges and the way they're building their dorms, I was amazed at the dorms that I moved my daughter into.
Oh, it's not fair, right? The way that these
Granite
places look.
countertops, and I mean, it was unbelievable. So, and I think especially with the pandemic, with people spending more time at home, they're making it more their own and they're making it more comfortable and they're putting much more of their budget into home improvements. So I think there's always going to be a niche for it. So, yeah.
That's good to know. I mean, because obviously you mentioned it earlier that even the educational path has changed. Before it might have been a 2-year program, and in a lot of cases, the colleges have switched to a 4-year, where you're getting involved in everything, the fabrics, the colors, the design, all those kinds of things coming into it. So it's just very interesting. So last question for you. What advice would you give to my students who are considering going into the similar profession or a similar degree program in college?
I would say if you can afford to do it, definitely do a 4-year program. If you can't do a 4-year program, do a 2-year and then work and get a 4-year degree. I think part of that is also that it shows that you can do it. It gives you a broader knowledge base, and you also have to be able to have the business side of design. There's a lot of artsy parts to it, but you also have to be a smart business person to make it work. So take business classes. Try to do a school that has an internship, so that you're out there working with companies and seeing how it actually is. I think one of the biggest things that I found out, more so with nursing, is that what they teach you in school and the reality of what it's really like are two completely separate things. So you also want to be out there working to see if it really is something you want to do. You might get out there and actually do it and realize that it's not what you want. My son thought he wanted to be an architect. He went to school to be an architect and then realized there's a lot of math and there's a lot of figuring out foundations and how much fill and how much pressure. And he's like, that's not what I wanted to do. I thought I'd just be like designing houses and making them look good. So you want to make sure you know what you're getting into and you're going to enjoy it, because if you hate going to work every day, no matter what you're doing, it's not worth it.
Well, and 2 follow-ups. So what did your son end up going into then?
So he tried marketing for a while and did that for a little bit, and then ultimately went into the Air Force, and he's been in the Air Force.
Oh, wow. How about that? Okay. Yep. He found his calling.
He found his calling. Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then the last question I was going to ask then in that regard, what percentage of interior designers would you say are solo entrepreneurs or with small firms versus the big boys that are out there that do it? Because I know a lot of architecture firms will have an interior designer on staff, when they're doing big projects and things like that. Actually, they'll have an entire department of interior designers. But what would you say? What's the percentage breakdown? Is it 60-40? Is, one way or the other?
That's a really good question. I really am not sure about that. I really don't know.
Yeah, because the only reason I ask is because, of course, having your own practice, referral business is a big deal, isn't it? I mean, getting those referrals from a happy client that says, oh, you've got to be talking to Suzanne. She's the one that's going to be able to help you with it.
Right.
So, it's just an interesting dynamic. So that even comes back to your suggestion about the business. You better understand the business side, because if you're running your own practice, you got to understand, the way that all works and how you market. I mean, seriously, in your case, all the hats that you have to wear as an entrepreneur, right?
Right. Because quite honestly, when you start out, you don't, and even now, I don't feel like I have the budget to pay somebody to market me. I don't feel like I have the budget to, to do that. So my hope is that I do someday, but at this time I don't. So if you're starting out as your own company, you're learning how to do that, and you're Googling things. And I built my own website, and every once in a while I'll pay the website hosting company, and I'll go on there with them and say, I'm trying to do this and this isn't working. And and they talk me through everything. So you can teach yourself a lot of things, but you also have to keep in mind that you're using that time to do other things. You're not doing design. And if you're not doing design and having billable hours to your clients, you're not pulling money in. So
Yeah. What a balancing act it is to be a small business owner.
yes. Yep.
Well, Suzanne, I cannot thank you enough for taking this time to do this interview with
Sure.
me today. And
Absolutely.
I can't wait to share it with my students. And I've got a student right now who's looking at interior design. So thank you so much for this. And
Sure.
I really, really appreciate it.
No problem. If anybody wants to reach out and they want some input, I'd be happy to talk with them.
Oh, well, that's great. Thank you for that opportunity too. Yeah, that would be huge. So
Okay.
thanks again.
All right. You take